Thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Listing, where we discuss the business of real estate outside of the listing environment. I'm your host, Jeremy Medor.
And I'm Danielle Downs.
And 2024 is really proven to be a very different year from last year.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have noticed this year is that our video adoption is significantly higher than last year.
Yes.
So we're trending about 25% of our listings are including video.
That's huge.
Whereas last year it was about 20.5%.
Yeah.
So it's a 4.5% increase in adoption, which doesn't sound like a lot from a percentage basis, but when you're talking about doing like the 3,500 listings that we did last year, 5% of 3,500, I'm not even going to try to do
I don't math, so.
It's like 150, it's like 150 videos,
yeah.
like 165, I think, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a significant amount of videos that we now have to push through our pipeline, editing process, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, but these are all growth things.
Mm-hmm.
And our guest that we're going to have on in a moment has gone through similar scalability challenges in his own business. He's an attorney and he does closings. And he grew from a one-person shop all the way to his existing, I want to say he said he had like 13 or 14 people, very similar to our size. Very similar to our size.
Yep.
And so we kind of swapped some war stories, as it were. Some of the business growth challenges that we've encountered and how we've overcome them. And it's been really interesting because you've seen a lot of the more recent growth challenges that we've encountered, just opening up Next Level Studios.
Right. Yep.
Right. Taking Keith primarily off the road to, primarily work on the back end has been a large growth challenge for us because we've had to, replace his labor on the road, primarily with our newer trainers and stuff. Dylan has been really instrumental in that, which has been superb. Crystal cannot go without mentioning her. Yeah. She's done a really good job with helping Dylan replace that absence of Keith on the road. Obviously, he's still getting on the road here and there for specific jobs. Right. But just like myself, he's working on larger scale items.
Yeah, it's been important to have him in the back end and have him in the office because sometimes, we get pop-up clients that need, like last week, needed headshot ASAP, needed it delivered ASAP. And it was like 5 p.m. on a Wednesday. And by Thursday at 10 a.m., she had all of her stuff. Yeah. And that's if Keith wasn't in the office or in the back end, that wouldn't have happened. Yep. So it's been really, and obviously getting to work with him every day is a plus too. That's
right. He brings a lot of, he brings a different perspective to the office. Yep. He has a different way of thinking about things, and we all do. Yeah. But his approach to things is very, very interesting to see how his mind works, and it works so fast. It's awesome to see. Anyway, enough ado about that. Business growth is an amazing, awesome, daunting, risk-taking thing, which we love to hate and hate to love. But the truth of the matter is, without it, we wouldn't have been able to surround ourselves with people that we really have come to appreciate and value in our lives. And thank you. Thank you for being a part of this journey.
Well, thank you. It's been a journey, and I've enjoyed it. As you know,
I do.
You know where I stand, and I just the friendships I've made along the way. It's not just working, and I truly love getting to talk to people.
We are very fortunate. So without further ado, let's get to our guest. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Beyond the Listing. I'm your host, Jeremy Medor, and today I am sitting with
Attorney David Rocheford, and I'm a real estate attorney. I've got a practice in Leominster. We do real estate law. We represent buyers, sellers, mortgage lenders, and been in the area practicing for 23 some odd years. Yep. Yeah.
And how can you be reached?
Best way is just a direct call to my office, 978-728-5104. That's directly to me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then our website is thebestclosings.com.
Thebestclosings.com. That's some big shoes.
Yeah, it's a lot to live up to.
Fantastic. I can't wait to get started to our conversation.
Sure. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm curious, just rolling right into it. I'm curious to see, some of your perspectives on not just the real estate market, but business in general, as it applies to your law firm.
Yeah. So I've got a small law firm for the most part, and we specialize strictly in real estate conveyancing. So we do represent primarily mortgage lenders, banks, but we also represent buyers and sellers in the area. And we've been at it I've been at it for like 25 years. Okay. My office has been in Leominster for 20 years in the Leominster area.
Where did it originate?
So I'm originally from Marlborough, Massachusetts, born and raised there. And I moved here in Westminster in 2000 and opened a practice in Fitchburg for about 3 or 4 years and moved to Leominster and been there since.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And it started off as solo?
Out of my home in Westminster for 6 months or so. Okay. And then, I fortunately had a good reception from the community. And
wonderful.
Yeah, I had a good client base to start with.
Very good.
So I, grew into a small building in a small office in Fitchburg.
Yep.
I had my first staff who's still with me and just practiced there for 3 years. Then I moved over to Leominster after about 3 or 4 years. And I was in one place there for 10 years. And then we built the building we're in now. We've been there 6 years or so.
So that's your own property?
Yeah, where we are now.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, bought it from a client who was, he came to me he had it on the market, was going to sell it. The sale fell through.
It was already commercial prior?
It was, It was a commercial vacant lot.
Okay.
And then he convinced me to buy it. So
wonderful.
Did that. He said he'd build a building and
well, there you have it. Rest is history.
Rest is history. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's funny. He had initially was going to put a 2-story building there. Have you seen my building?
I've been in it. Yeah, we did a closing there.
Yeah. So it was initially going to be a 2-story building, and I kind of scaled back. That's too much for me, and wasn't that optimistic about the future of the market. Or
sure, you didn't see your needs growing to that.
Yeah. Now I wish I'd listened to him.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where we're at with our space. So when we initially toured the studio space with our realtor. For us, it was enormous because where we were coming from to this was a huge upgrade. And we're already busting at the seams.
Sure.
And I didn't see some of the things that we were doing taking off as quickly as they have.
Right.
And the need for that studio space, wasn't at that time nearly what it is today. And so we're already looking at future expansion within the same building that we're in by having a second studio space in addition to what we already have.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see what happens in that pipeline of business.
It is.
Where are you attributing your largest growth from? Like, where do you see?
So just, we had the boom in the market.
Yeah.
After 2010, around that area. Yep. That's when we sustained our biggest growth. And we moved out of, we built our building we're in now in like 2016, I think.
Okay.
And so when I built the building, I had, there were 3 attorneys and 2 paralegals. Now it was 5 attorneys and 5 paralegals.
Wow.
So,
okay.
The growth did happen quickly, and it was sustained growth. And now we're not overgrown because obviously the market's pulled back a bit, but we still sustain, a good practice and such. And we will continue to do that. And then the market's going to pick up again eventually.
If it's one thing that you can count on is the inconsistency.
Yeah. I may not be in it, but
it's the ebb and flow. Well, there's that, I suppose. Yep.
Yeah. No, but my staff is younger. The attorneys are, 10 to 12, 15 years younger than me.
Sure.
So, they'll carry on and
that's
work that market.
Yep. Because you built a business versus just a you.
Yes. Yeah. The biggest, I don't want to say regret, is that I could have found a better name for the business.
Fair enough.
More generic name.
Yep, yeah. I understand. Yeah. Medor photography is kind of,
everybody wants you to take their photograph.
Precisely.
Right?
And obviously with that came its own growth challenges. And I'm sure that you and I could probably swap a lot of stories on
very
those.
Similar.
Yeah. And, but I did find that one of the biggest takeaways of growing Medor photography, and let me know how this matches up with you, is that the initial going from just me to just me and somebody, that initial push was the hardest of all of them, because I was offloading half of my workload to actually Keith, who started with me 8 years ago, actually on Friday. So he's been my right-hand man for that long. And as we added on more photographers, the process of adding on more photographers got easier and easier the more we added, because people started understanding that they weren't essentially going to be dedicated to just one photographer. They're dedicated to one photography company that has had a quality assurance that they could provide each and every visit, regardless of the photographer that came. And so that arc of sorts was a very important arc to undertake. And while it was very painful early on to have the thick skin, the feedback and the criticism and all that kind of stuff, it was imperative to do that, because otherwise we wouldn't be where we are today for the growth that we've achieved.
Yeah.
Is that
I can certainly relate to that. Yeah. And I'm probably at that crust.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because early a few years ago, everything was me. They wanted me to do the closing. They wanted me to review this, review that. And it takes time to coach people to understand that you're getting the same quality, just not directly from me. And they have my oversight.
Sure.
And then some of that's hard to stand by, because when you have somebody on board that's not living up to that, it's like, well, I said,
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, we did go through that.
Yeah.
And we've had people on board and staff that just didn't live up to the expectations that I had set for myself and for the staff and for my clients. And I'm always trying to be fair and let people grow and do their own thing.
Coach them.
Yeah, coach them and lead them. But some people just aren't meant to be coached or led. And when that happens, you have to make that.
I think there are people that have decided that they're done learning.
Yeah, done learning. Yeah, and have other crises that they're dealing with.
There is that too. Yeah. They don't have space.
And that's kind of what we experienced, and we just didn't have room. We can only be so flexible before it starts affecting everybody on the team.
You have a business to operate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I think that's probably what slowed some of the progress is just that learning curve and understanding that there's only so much tolerance we can take before it starts affecting the business, and then having to stand up to the fundamentals that we set for the business and the goals.
Sure.
And just moving on.
Okay. So on that note, the goals and the fundamentals of the business, are there any businesses that you have looked at as growth models for yourself, or you've kind of put it together yourself over experience?
I really did put it together myself. I've had some good coaching, business coaches and such and mentors, but primarily, it's kind of a unique business because my clients, even though I represent buyers and sellers and lenders, my clients come from another referral source, like realtors and loan officers.
Right. You're not usually getting directly to the homeowner or the home buyer.
I'm not even though we serve the consumer, we don't get our business from the consumer for the most part.
It's the same thing with us.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, obviously, so the realtor hires us to photograph the home.
Yes.
But we wouldn't be in that home if it weren't for the realtor.
That's
Very
right.
similarly, you probably wouldn't have that that closing if it weren't for the realtor hooking you up with that client.
Yeah. So you have the homeowner who's telling you, you take a picture here, take a picture of this. This looks good. This doesn't, and you have to serve them.
Essentially, yes.
But ultimately, it's that referral source that
you need to honor the most.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they're the ones that are the routine visitors.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing the best by them, you're going to get cut off.
Exactly.
Source.
Yeah. So the consumer that I serve consumes once or twice in their lifetime.
Yep.
Whereas the referral partners that I have refer dozens and dozens times a year.
I understand completely.
Yeah, so it's kind of a hard business model to get across to people.
Yep.
I've consulted with business coaches and advisors, and it takes them a little while to understand that,
because
this is your customer, but this is your referral source.
Right. Because there's two avenues that you're actually having to look at. You have the B2C, business to consumer relationship.
Yes.
But you're not marketing B2C. You're marketing B2B to the realtor in hopes to get to the B2C.
Yes.
So that channel, that medium that you're having to go through is in itself the gateway that you have to aim at, but in such a fashion that when they refer you to the eventual client that you need, it's done convincingly enough so that there's a higher likelihood of success for that client hiring you.
Yes.
That's hard.
It is.
That's hard. And we understand that completely.
Yeah.
It's actually very similar to one of the, prior to doing real estate photography, I was doing weddings. I photographed weddings and portraits, family portraits. Family portraits and portraits were a lot easier to come by repeat clients because people normally took family photos every year. Weddings were a one-off deal.
Sure.
Generally.
Yeah.
And very similar to home purchases. If you did repeat business with them, it was years down the road. It wasn't next year or the following. So there was no rinse and repeat kind of thing. And so for weddings, it's a B2C relationship. However, you can't really reach out to the brides or the grooms to be in hopes of getting their business directly,
next
because
year or 2 years from now,
you would be advertising to literally everybody in the population between the ages of potentially 18 to 35. And that's a lot of people to advertise to, very similar to you guys.
Sure.
So what you need to do instead is you need to work with the wedding venues, or you need to work with some aggregator, lead generator, like the knot.com or weddings.com or whatever, and become one of their referral partners or whatever.
Sure, but like caterers and other people.
Correct, right? And so that's a very difficult, very challenging relationship, because none of them really wanted to rely on you as their only wedding photographer. You were one of many to them.
Right.
And so the quality of that lead source was extremely casting nets all day long.
Yeah, you have to make it worth their while to refer you.
Correct. Yeah. And so what I specialized in early on was developing tight relationships with people and understanding what people's needs were. And which is why when I got involved in real estate, I was very quickly able to articulate what the realtors were actually looking for versus what photographers thought they were looking for.
Sure.
And what they're looking for is reliability, uptime, speed. Obviously, they want good quality. They want the photography to be great.
Right.
But beyond that, it's not about the photography. It's about how smooth did the transaction go.
It's true.
And did you build their business in the process?
Yeah. Will they refer you? Will their client refer you again?
Right. Right. And so having said all this, does that still reflect in your business as well?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And for us, we're the last person the buyer or seller sees in the transaction, because we're at the closing table with them.
After that, it's done.
After that, it's done. So we're the parting, the parting shot that they receive. So we have to make sure that the closing goes well and is successful, because that reflects on the real estate agent and the loan officer,
the whole pipeline,
who said, "Hey, this is the attorney we want you to do the closing for."
Okay,
and it comes down to, gee, that was a horrible closing. Nothing went well. Why did you refer us to that person? So when an agent gets that feedback, you're certainly not likely to get work from them again.
Yeah,
and that's understandable, obviously. Yeah. So our motto and our website is called "The Best Closings," right? So it's a lot to live up to.
Yeah,
and that's what we try to provide for that reason, because ultimately, that's what our product is. Sure, we do title examinations, we provide title insurance, and other legal aspects of it. But our product really is that smile and service and that good feeling at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we're selling, and that's what the realtors and loan officers come to us for.
Sure.
They don't care if we do a bang up legal document or whatever, as long as their client is happy in the end and they get that smile and walk away in good feeling.
Mission
that's
complete.
What we're selling.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what our product is ultimately.
Yeah. So the ends are more important than necessarily the means. I mean, so long you have to you have your requirements that you have to hit.
Sure.
Legally.
Yeah. It's you certainly can't do a bang up title job and say, oh, well, it looks like you own it.
Right.
You have to do that extraordinarily well, and
Correct.
we do. But ultimately, you have to wrap it up so it looks presentable.
Package it nicely.
Package it nicely.
Yeah.
And if the packaging doesn't look good, it doesn't matter what's in it or how good the title exam was. If you didn't wrap it well, then it's
that's well said, David.
Yeah,
that's really well said. Yeah. No, okay.
Presentation.
What got you involved in this line of work to begin with?
So my wife really encouraged me to go to law school.
Yep.
And I was going for my undergraduate was in criminal justice.
Okay.
And I wanted to get into law enforcement, and for whatever reason I didn't get into law enforcement right away. But I figured, hey, I'd go to college, maybe law school, and maybe I'll become a prosecutor or defense attorney or something like that. And she encouraged me to do it, and I graduated and learned that I had no interest in law enforcement or
isn't that something?
Or criminal work or anything like that. And in the meantime, I had got my real estate license, and I was a real estate agent for about 3 or 4 years through law school. And when I got out of law school, someone suggested, why don't you become an attorney and you can mess up your own deals? That was a joke. And it is a joke because we don't mess up deals.
That was the late 90s? 90s, early 90s?
Yeah. So I graduated law school in 97.
Okay.
I think I was a realtor in 95. I worked for a small company. I was the worst. I was a horrible realtor. It's a hard job. And I have so much respect for agents that are really good at it, because it is. I think if I was a realtor now, I've learned an awful lot about people.
You might have a better shot at it.
I'd have a better shot at it. But back then, my brother listed his house with somebody else.
Sure.
So it's like, oh, hey.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I'm a realtor, remember that.
Yep.
So I forgot, and so that was my own fault.
Sure.
But you learn a lot, and it was fun, a fun time. And it got me through law school and such. So with a bunch of other side jobs as well, because I couldn't pay the bills with real estate. But,
I understand.
Yeah. So when I graduated law school, it just felt natural I'd get into doing real estate. And I was actually with a firm that brought me on as an intern because he wanted to expand his practice. He said, well, I figure I do real estate. Why don't you do something else? So I was going to do something else, maybe criminal, and we'd have a firm that did a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And then the more I did of criminal-related work, the more I realized that I didn't want to do it, and I ended up just doing a lot of real estate. And that was in 2000, 1999, 2000, 2001, and it was a busy market. And then we got so busy I didn't have time to do anything else but real estate.
Okay, so it became a full-time pursuit at that point.
It did, yeah, okay. Yeah. And then I went out on my own in 2001, and the rest is history. I had a good few client base that let me get away from the firm that I was in.
Yep.
And so I was actually, the firm I was in was in Southborough, and I was commuting from Westminster to Southborough on a regular basis, and that just got to be too much. So I opened a practice out of my house, and that didn't last very long. That was like 6 months before it grew to the point where I had to move to Fitchburg, and that's where we started the conversation.
Yep.
But the market was very busy. It was a booming market.
Yeah. A little bit, I'd like to kind of go down the avenue of growth. Mm-hmm. What encouraged you to expand beyond yourself?
The need, really. It's hard to turn business away, in a sense, when you have your referral sources. They like what you're doing. You do good work for them. So you have a real estate agent or a loan officer say, hey, you do really good. Here's another deal. Here's another deal. Here's another deal. And it's like, well, it was at one point when early on I would say, well, I can't take on another deal. I'm too busy. It's just me. And they would tend to send the next deal they had to somebody else. Yep. And that person would just keep accepting it because they had a bigger practice. Yep. They would just keep accepting it. And then
so you saw stuff,
you're not getting any more.
Yeah, you're seeing the scraps, what you thought were scraps, falling off the table, but the main course was going with it.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
I understand.
Yeah. So it was like, well, I can just take the scraps, or I can, grow and, take the main course. So, and that's sort of what I did. Yeah. So and we grew fairly quickly. I started with one paralegal. I opened a small office. The office wasn't much bigger than this. 2 rooms about this size. One was a conference room, and the other was, my office and the paralegal's office.
Sure.
And it was a paralegal / receptionist.
Yep.
And I hired her, and we worked the practice for 3 years where we were until we moved to a bigger space. And she became the lead paralegal, hired 2 other paralegals, and we hired an attorney. And that way we didn't have to turn the work away. Mm. And then the market kind of took care of itself. It slowed down a little bit.
Sure.
So the growth slowed down as well, but then the market picked up again, so the growth was there. And now we've just been ebbing and flowing.
Yep.
Yeah. And the paralegal that started in 2001 with me is now an attorney in the office.
Is that Lisa?
Alyssa, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So she started as a paralegal, and she went to law school, and about 4 years ago she graduated, and she's been practicing real estate law in the office since.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then we have 3 other attorneys as well.
So your longest employee has been with you quite some time.
Yeah, 23 years.
So almost the duration.
Yeah, well,
that's incredible.
Yeah, except for the short time I worked out of my home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but it was just you at that point.
It was just me at that point. Yeah. Yep. So I was doing chief cook and bottle washer, doing everything. Doing this.
I understand.
Settlement statement.
I understand. Yep.
Yeah. So and you learn an awful lot. That's never left me as far as the respect I have for my paralegals.
Sure.
Because I know.
Because you've been in the trenches.
The settlement statement and getting the figures, getting the numbers, and making the mistakes. And just kicking yourself about, I should have done this, should have done that, how did I miss that? And then learning. And then, so I've got paralegals that work for me now, and I've been there. I know what they're going through, and I've got a big respect for them because they really run my practice. It's not the attorneys that run it. Well, the attorney, I run it.
No,
the attorneys do the legal aspect of it.
Yeah,
but the paralegals really do the engine behind the business.
We get that. Yeah. We get that.
And that's probably true for most businesses. But.
Yeah. So, I mean, our unsung hero is Danielle. She is our back-end administrator who handles all of the scheduling and the client bookings. So all the client communication goes through her. She is our hub and spoke. Mm-hmm. One of the things that sometimes doesn't get talked about is how much work she does in a centralized fashion that keeps the machine just so well oiled. The photographer's schedule is taken care of for them. Client communication is taken care of for them. We deliver the files. We do the billing. We literally just wine and dine our photographers to make sure that what they're doing is strictly producing content.
Sure.
Right. And so Danielle handles a lion's share of the other stuff that they don't do. And then beyond that, we also, of course, have our editing team, et cetera. But if it weren't for our back end engine, the whole thing would grind to a halt.
Right. Yeah. You don't want your photographers worrying about scheduling and
my goodness,
where they're going next and marketing.
I was doing that. Sure. I was the chief cook and bottle washer, like you said, at the earlier stages. And the first person that I hired, Mary, she took care of my bookings, is what she did, because I was finding that between listings, I would drive, of course, between the listings. I'd have people that would text me or call me in between, and I would always wrap up the phone call with, could you please text me what we just committed to for a time and day, Sure. And they understood. I was on the road. I wasn't going to text, right? But I didn't want to let it escape my memory. And so they would text it and stuff. It got to the point where I was spending a good 15 minutes in between every single listing, just taking care of handling my own bookings. And that was just me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, this isn't going to scale very well if I want to have another photographer. And so I hired her. She took care of it on a part-time basis. She was available like 4 or 5 hours a day. And she took care of all the bookings for me. And within like 3 or 4 months after doing that, I had hired a second photographer because it just,
it worked.
It worked, and having a centralized source like that is so very similar to your paralegals. And without that kind of central hub, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't scale.
Sure.
So,
yeah. And you have to realize that as a business owner that wants to grow, you have to realize that you have to offload things. And that's when when I realized that I was going in the right direction, because chief cook and bottle washer, I do everything. So I'd finish a closing, I'd make the photocopies, I'd get the FedEx label ready, I'd put the documents in the FedEx back to the lender. And then one day into, I don't know when it was in my practice, I realized that I didn't know how to get onto the computer to generate a FedEx label.
Oh my.
I was like, wow.
And that's when you've turned a corner.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I still don't to this day, but.
And that's good.
It is good.
That's good. Yeah. That means that you're doing it. You're doing the right job.
Right.
And similarly, so we have an IT guy who handles programming for us because we have our own internal software that we run. Keith does a slew of stuff that I can't even name, to be honest with you. So he's been with me for 8 years. I could not fill his shoes today. I could go to a listing and do, for the most part, what he does, but not nearly to the degree that he does it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I've hired people that in the end are more polished than I at the job that they're being hired for, so that I can take a step back and say, okay, my view is making sure that these people stay employed, that they stay happy, that they service our clients correctly, that we train and cross-train, and we just do what we need to build an actual brand and business management versus the transactional element of things, right? So we're all about building relationships, not transactions.
True.
And we wouldn't be able to do that if I was also in the weeds doing the day-to-day processes.
Yeah. And it's that realization that spurs the growth when you finally realize that.
Yep.
You don't have to be on top of everything, every particular thing. You just have to be on top of some things to make sure everybody else is.
How long did it take you to realize that? I'm curious.
Years. I had read the book, The E-Myth.
Yep.
Have you read that? Yeah. So that's when I realized it was like a eye-opening experience when I read that. I went, oh my God, that's me. They talk about pies, making pies, and the woman was the cook and she did everything in the example, and then they realized that she could document her recipes, train somebody else to do the recipes, and it would still be her business, and which she could still run it. But somebody else had to make the pies.
Correct. Because you can't do both.
Yeah, you can't be the technician all the time. Yeah, so that's the E myth is the entrepreneurial myth, and they talk about people, technicians, plumbers, or electricians, or attorneys, having working for a firm or a company, saying, you know what, I could do this. And they go out and they're a technician. They know how to plumb. They know how to do all that.
But they don't know how to run a business.
And they do it good. But when it comes to running a business, when they think they can do it, it's really they just stick to doing the technical side of it, and the business side of it really just escapes them. And,
Well, that's part of the systems management side of things, right?
Exactly.
So looking at it one or two levels above just the actual production of the work is important, especially at the very beginning. And then, of course, the higher up you get in the future, as far as the number of levels above the production element of things, or the day-to-day involvement, there comes a point where you're too far removed from the process that you don't understand the process anymore. Right? But there's also too close to the process that you don't understand how to manage the process. And you have to have that. It's not a 30,000 foot. It's like you're flying around 10,000 feet. And so you're still keeping an eye on things. You're crossing the T's, dotting the I's as you see them, but you're also paying people, and you're employing people who also know to do that themselves. And that level of management is really, really important, especially earlier on. And removing yourself from the day-to-day in a safe manner so that you're not distancing yourself. You're just making sure that you are seeing more than one transaction at a time versus just being involved in that one transaction. That's a large step that a lot of business owners don't feel equipped to take, because that is the biggest growth step of all of them.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
Yeah,
very much so. And it's having to release, let go of a lot when you realize that, I can't plumb all the toilets. I have to plumb all, I can't plumb all the pipes or whatever the case may be. I have to step back and make sure they're getting plumbed, but I don't have to do them. I just have to manage the process.
Correct. Maybe QC it along the way if you're really unsure as to whether or not it's getting done properly, or just simply spend more time training the individuals to do it the way that you would do it.
And it's true. That's what it comes down to. And as far as when I learned that, I had read that book, and it's probably 12 or 13 years ago, probably maybe even longer than that. But it took me a long time to
implement.
Once I digested it, it was like, okay, wait a second. How do you do this?
How do I start?
How do you start? And
so did you start working with a business coach at that time, or had you already been?
I think I did. So it was I had come across the reading first. I read the book, and then I worked with a business coach who was very helpful, but still didn't really fully understand the business my business model and what I struggled with in the particular industry. But it was extremely helpful. He helped me with the little things like the implementing systems and processes and such, which was phenomenal. And then I've had other coaches and mentors who, during harder times, when you couldn't get things to work right in your business, focus on things you can change. If your business isn't going well and you can't change things in your business, change stuff in yourself. Which is kind of what I went through in 2008 during the market crash. The business was hard to keep together, and a lot of unknowns, and it became a mental challenge more than anything else. And then,
can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, so I ended up working with somebody who told me basically that if all aspects of your life, so to speak, are unmanageable, just focus on one and manage one of them, and the rest will come into focus. And they did. And the easiest thing to manage at the time was myself personally. Physically, I was not in the best shape. And so I started working out on a regular basis and felt good about that. And when I went into the office, I felt a little bit better. And the conversation started with the person I was coaching with, was that, I really don't want to go into the office today. I said, well, what do you want to do? Why don't you go to the gym, work on that? Because if you go into the gym, you'll see progress. Once you get that progress, move that progress over to your business. And it's kind of what I did. And it was helpful in that respect. And then I don't know if it was me that helped bring the business, along, or the market just changed and turned into a
chicken and egg.
Yeah, whatever came first. But, there was some coaching involved there. And,
sure.
I learned a lot when you just take control of what you can instead of trying to control everything, which was what I was doing at that time.
Yep.
So, and that was helpful.
That's a humbling thing to have to go through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because you realize how insignificant your impact can be on some things in your life.
Sure. Like rates and the market.
Right. Yeah. There are so many things that are outside of our control. Like I can't force real estate to come on the market. No amount of marketing or advertising is going to encourage people to sell their home. Not from us.
Yes.
Maybe there's something that could happen from a bank standpoint for rate, rate management. Somebody could run a sale on rates or something like that to try to maybe stimulate some growth. But from where we sit, there's nothing that we can do other than simply wait our turn. And all we can do is the best that we're able to do on a per transaction basis to continue to galvanize the relationships that we're forming or have formed, so that when the market comes back around, we're ready and primed.
Sure.
And that's the hardest thing that we've had to cope with, like especially last year. Last year was a significant dry up in volume altogether. I don't know about you guys. I know that, with refinances, you guys have to still do those closings, right?
Yeah, but okay. We're off 60 to 70% on that volume.
Yeah. So you guys obviously get hit in different ways than we do. But we only work on the sell side and only the sell side when a house sells.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Or I'm sorry, that's not true. We work on the sell side when a house gets put on the market. Whether or not it sells is quite frankly irrelevant to our business.
Sure.
But the challenge there is that when you're already only working with half of the population to begin with, any changes in the market demographic is also going to be further felt.
Yes.
And so we had to weather through that. And so, volume basis changed drastically. But what we did instead last year is that we really buckled down on improving what it is that we did on a per transaction basis to ensure that while we were at each of our properties, we were doing the best damn job we possibly could do. And we did that through reinvestment in our training program, making sure that our gear was up to snuff, making sure that we were on top of the latest technology and the trends of the market. We reimagined, our studio. We moved offices. We created new products that we didn't have before, like this very podcast. And so we tried to always continue moving in the direction of progress. Whether or not the business followed, that was just a matter of time.
Sure.
It
had to follow.
It had to.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that if you just simply put your best foot forward every single day, it's going to come behind you.
It's true.
If you go into a day thinking to yourself, what can I do for sales today? You're probably going up the wrong tree.
Right.
I think that what we should do as business owners is, what kind of impact can I have on people's lives today? And that starts with our own employees and making sure that they are really nurtured and know that somebody has their back. Because if our employees feel like they're a very important asset to our company, they are more likely to treat our clients as important assets to our company.
Right. So it's just a circle comes around. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And obviously the more we treat our clients as assets, the more they treat us as an asset in return.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in businesses that maybe don't do well just focus on the one thing that they can do for their business is the technical aspect.
Right.
So I've got back to the plumbing. I've got to plumb a toilet. I got to plumb a toilet. And if there's no toilets to plumb, business is over.
Right.
Well, it's not true. You've got to find, keep your employees happy.
Something else to plumb.
Yep. Something else. Yeah. Something else to plumb.
Yep.
Or, a way to market that plumbing, or,
right.
Put a twist on it, or teach about plumbing.
Yep.
Do a podcast about plumbing.
Yep.
And then, you may not pick up right away. But
it's an investment.
It's got to. Yeah.
It's an investment.
And you've got to invest in other things than just the technical aspect of it.
Yep.
And I think, I don't know if I actually realized I learned that, but I did learn it, early on in the business, that it's not just the closings that we do or the title examinations that we do. It's the relationships that we're building with clients. It's the software we're using. So we've changed software 3 or 4 times since we've opened my practice. And sometimes, the employees always look at me and say, well, why are we changing the software? Well,
because we have to.
Because we have to, just to be different and to try something different. Yep. And always trying to stay ahead of the curve. Because if it was, if I had stayed with the software that we had initially, I think it was Microsoft Excel is how we were doing our settlement statements. And before that, it was typewriters. So I think if you keep that mindset is like not keeping up with the technology and you're just using a typewriter all the time, sure, you're getting the job done, you're doing your closings, you're producing your documents, but you're just using a typewriter. Right. You got to keep up with it.
Yep.
And I think just having that that vision of not just the technical side of it, but everything that supports the technical side, and staying up with that.
David, it sounds to me like you're really in the right spot that you need to be in your life.
Well, I'm fortunate. Yeah, fortunate to have that opportunity to be where I am, and that fortune comes with it's just not all me; it's my staff, and of course, my family.
Yeah, it's obviously a large circle, a large network that has allowed for that to exist.
The clients that support me. Yeah. When I started my practice, I golfed with for some reason I joined a tournament, and I'm not a good golfer. We had talked about this, but it's a good way to spoil a walk. Yeah. But I did get involved. This was probably in 2001 into a golf tournament that was sponsored by a real estate organization, and I got into I figured I'd network with some real estate agents, some loan officers. I ended up golfing in a foursome with 3 other attorneys. Okay. That were real estate attorneys.
No networking happened.
No networking at all.
And I'm sure somewhere in the organization, when they went to go put the teams together, like, oh, these guys will get along. They'll talk shop.
I don't know what the thought was. And I was naive. I should have thought more to make sure that, put me with this person. Or, I'll just join a foursome. And I was told during that foursome that I would never cut it because it's a very tight community and they're a very old boy type of network. And
it probably was at the time, or maybe that was a reflection of themselves.
Maybe the reason why I don't like golf.
Oh, perhaps
I left that tournament. I was like, oh gosh, I might as well just hang it up now. But I didn't, and I met some real estate agents and some loan officers, and the community's just treated me very, very well. So I'm just saying that's part of my good fortune. Yeah, is that I've had good people to work with in this region.
Yeah. So I'm not disagreeing with anything that you just said. Just an observation though. The personal confidence maybe that you proceeded with, even in the face of that adversity, right? Like you got into a foursome and the guys are like, get out before you sink, right? And instead of looking at that and being like, oh man, I did the wrong thing, you went back and you doubled down. And so you convinced yourself, you convinced yourself that, you know what, that wasn't a good experience there. I'm going to try another method. And you succeeded. Yeah, no,
it's true. I didn't let that stop me. Yeah. It certainly made me pause.
Sure.
But at that point, I had kind of gone all in. I had left the firm I was with, and I really didn't have much of a choice.
Yep.
I burnt my boat at the shore, so to speak.
Sure.
I was like, well, I'll give it a shot, and it worked out.
There's something to be said about burning your boats.
Yeah.
There is no plan B. This is just plan A, and we're going to adapt plan A as we go along.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's been really, really good to catch up with you and get some insight as to how you built your business, David. It's nice to hear that from a different business partner within the real estate
industry.
Interesting
to see that we have a lot of the same
struggles.
Of parallels.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for coming in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah.